This week's story is Enemy Pie. What can you do about a kid you don't like? Here's a tasty idea. And we're going to start off with going through the vocabulary words that we're going to see throughout our story. Our first vocabulary word for the week, it is squinted. It's a verb and it means looked at something with partly closed eyes. And if we watch here, they're going to show you what that means. So you can see she's squinting, looking like she's having troubles. And her eyes are partly closed. Our next word is satisfied. Satisfied is a verb which means pleased with something. So let's see what this little boy is satisfied about. So he's given a thumbs up and a smile, so he is pleased. Our next word is boomerang. It's a noun and it's a curved, flat hunting tool that can be thrown so that it returns to you. So let's watch this video.
Well, it might be dangerous for an average 2.5-year-old, but not Ben. He's the Australian National Junior Champion.
Oh, I did. That was a good
title he
try.
won against children ranging up to 15 years old. Ben doesn't talk too well yet, but he doesn't have to. He lets his throwing arm do his talking for him. And although he can't catch the boomerang, that's no problem. Grandpa's there to do the honors. And now, Bunny will attempt to throw and catch his giant 8-foot boomerang, one of the largest in the world. Once airborne, it hits a speed of 50 miles an hour. And considering the fact it weighs 8 pounds, if it hits you, it can cause severe damage. The real trick, however, is getting it to fly in the first place. Well, that's it. It's airborne. Now can Bunny catch it? Gee, it's the first time I've ever caught it.
All right, very cool. So that is boomerang. So you can see it's a very large one compared to normal. Pretty neat. All right, our next word is panicked. It's a verb, had such strong fear that you couldn't think or act in a normal way. So let's watch our video here. So you can see her face, her expression. She doesn't look very happy. So you can see she's very scared and frazzled. All right, our next word is crumpled. It's an adjective which means wrinkled. So you can see the paper there. And you can see that it is crumpled. So they crumpled it up or wrinkled it up into a ball. All right, our next word is relieved. It's a verb. It means relaxed because something unpleasant stopped or didn't happen. So you can see she looks like she's laid back, relaxed, and happy. So something on her computer stopped or didn't happen, so she was relieved. All right, and our last word. Oh, that was our last word, so perfect. So those are our vocabulary words for this week. For our story, we've got relieved, crumpled, panicked, boomerang, satisfied, squinted. This week's story is Enemy Pie. What can you do about a kid you don't like? Here is a tasty idea. So as we read, we're going to be making inferences. So in this story, the narrator learns something important about enemies and friends. So we need to see what we can infer or figure out what that might be. It should have been a perfect summer. My dad helped me build a treehouse. My sister was at camp, and I was on the best baseball team in town. It should have been a perfect summer, but it wasn't. It was all good until Jeremy Ross moved into the neighborhood. I didn't like Jeremy. He laughed when he struck me out. He had a party on his trampoline and I wasn't invited. Jeremy Ross was the only person on my enemy list. I never even had an enemy list before. But he came along and I needed one. I hung it up in my treehouse where Jeremy Ross was not allowed. Dad understood stuff like enemies. He told me that when he was my age, he had enemies too, but he knew a way to get rid of them. pulled an old recipe book off the kitchen shelf. Inside was a scrap of paper with faded writing. Dad squinted at it. So if you remember what squinted means, or if you don't remember, you can go look at the bottom of this page here, and we have our highlighted words here, and squinted, it's going to tell us that it means looked at something with partly closed eyes. Enemy pie, he said, satisfied. Remember, satisfied means pleased with something, and you can look at the bottom if you forgot what that means. So we're going to pause and think for just a second. Why doesn't the narrator like Jeremy? So if we look back, we can see that in the second paragraph here, he talks about how it was all good until Jeremy Ross moved into the neighborhood. And he said that Jeremy laughed at him when he struck him out, and he had a party and he didn't invite him. So that would be why he doesn't like him. So let's read on. What's in it? You may be wondering what exactly is an enemy pie. I was too, but Dad said the recipe was so secret he couldn't tell me. I begged him to tell me something, anything. I will tell you this, he said. Enemy pie is the fastest known way to get rid of enemies. This got my mind working. What kind of things, disgusting things, would I put into a pie for an enemy? I brought Dad weeds, but he shook his head. I brought earthworms. But he didn't need those. I gave him the gum I'd been chewing. He gave it right back. I went out to play alone. I listened to the sounds of my dad making enemy pie. I tried to imagine how horrible it must smell. Instead, I smelled something really, really good coming from our kitchen. I was confused. I went in to ask what was wrong. Enemy pie shouldn't smell this good. But Dad was smart. If enemy pie smelled bad, your enemy wouldn't eat it, he said. He pulled the pie out of the oven. It looked good enough to eat. But still, I wasn't sure how enemy pie worked. What exactly did it do to enemies? Maybe it made their hair fall out? I asked Dad, but he wouldn't tell me. While the pie cooled, he filled me in on my job. There's one part of enemy pie that I can't do. You need to spend a day with your enemy. Even worse, you have to be nice to him. That's the only way enemy pie can work. Are you sure you want to go through with this? It sounded horrible. It was scary, but it was worth a try. I just had to spend one day with Jeremy Ross. Then he'd be out of my hair for the rest of my life. I knocked on his door. All right, we're going to pause and think. What job does the dad give the narrator? So remember, the narrator's the little boy. And if we look back, his dad tells him that there's one part of the job that he can't do. And he tells the boy that he has to spend the day with his enemy. All right, let's read on. No enemies allowed. When Jeremy opened the door, he seemed surprised. I was nervous. Can you play? I asked. He looked confused. I'll ask my mom, he said. He came back holding his shoes. We rode bikes and played on the trampoline. Jeremy's mom made us lunch. After lunch, we went to my house. It was strange. I was kind of having fun with my enemy, but I couldn't tell Dad that, since he had worked so hard on the enemy pie. Jeremy knew how to throw a boomerang. Ooh, so remember, if we don't remember what a boomerang is, we can look at the bottom in the highlighted part and it tells us. A boomerang is a curved, flat hunting tool that can be thrown so that it returns to you. So, Jeremy knew how to throw a boomerang. He threw it, and it came right back to him. I threw it, and it went into my backyard. When we climbed over the fence to find it, the first thing Jeremy noticed was my treehouse. Can we go in it? He asked. I knew he was going to ask that. But he was the top person, the only person on my enemy list, and enemies aren't allowed in my treehouse. But he did teach me how to throw a boomerang, and he did let me play on his trampoline. He wasn't being a very good enemy. Okay, I said, but hold on. I climbed up first and tore the enemy list off the wall. We played games until my dad called us down for dinner. Dad made macaroni and cheese, my favorite. Jeremy's too. Maybe Jeremy Ross wasn't so bad after all. I was beginning to think we should just forget about enemy pie. All right, pause and think. Why does the narrator tear down his enemy list? So if we think about it, he's going to invite him into the treehouse, right? He decided he was going to let him up. He didn't want Jeremy to see this enemy list, right? He didn't want him to know that there were supposed to be enemies. So that's why he tore it down. Let's read on. Losing a best enemy. But after dinner, Dad brought out the pie and cut it into slices. Dad, I said, it's sure nice having a new friend in the neighborhood. I was trying to tell him that Jeremy was no longer my enemy, but Dad only smiled and nodded. I think he thought I was pretending. Wow, Jeremy said. My dad never makes pies like this. Suddenly I panicked. Remember, we can look at the bottom, and panic means had such strong fear that you couldn't think or act in a normal way. So the boy was panicking. I didn't want Jeremy to eat enemy pie. He was my friend. Jeremy, don't eat it. I think it's poisonous or something. Jeremy crumpled his eyebrows. Remember, if we don't remember what crumpled means, we're going to look at the bottom. It means to wrinkle or wrinkled. So he's going to wrinkle his eyebrows and looked at me funny. I felt relieved. Remember, relieved means relaxed because something unpleasant stopped or didn't happen. I had saved his life. I was a hero. If it's so bad, Jeremy asked, why has your dad already eaten half of it? I looked at my dad. He was eating enemy pie. Good stuff, was all Dad said. I watched them eat enemy pie. Dad was laughing, Jeremy was happily eating, and neither of them were losing any hair. It seemed safe enough, so I took a tiny taste. Enemy pie was delicious. Afterward, Jeremy invited me to play on his trampoline in the morning. I still don't know how to make enemy pie. I still wonder if enemies hate it or if their hair falls out. But I don't know if I'll ever get an answer because I just lost my best enemy. And our final pause and think, what happens when Jeremy eats the enemy pie? So we know if we look back that the dad was laughing, Jeremy was happily eating it, and nothing really happened. They just enjoyed the pie, right? So no hair fell out, there wasn't anything bad in it. So we want to think, remember if we go back to the beginning here, okay, the whole point was that we need to infer or figure out what the narrator learns. So we know that he started out with an enemy or somebody that he thought was an enemy, and his dad was going to help him out with that situation. So he tells him he's going to make that enemy pie. So as they make the enemy, or as his dad works on the recipe for the enemy pie, he's questioning of all the gross things that he could put in that pie. But as we read on, and the narrator's dad tells him he has to spend the day with his enemy, that's his biggest job that he can't do, that the boy has to do, I think we can start to realize what that enemy pie really is. It's not really an enemy pie, but it's kind of like a peace offering, or kind of sharing something with somebody and putting out that olive branch and being nice to someone. So we realize that the dad kind of sneakily made them friends. So, and he used that enemy pie as the way to get them to become friends. So he told the boy he had to spend the day with his enemy, which of course they started doing things and having fun with each other. And then at the end of the day, they all ate the pie. And as the little boy said at the end, he lost his best enemy. So that just tells us that we sometimes need to think back. And when we think someone might be an enemy, we really need to see if we've even tried to be a friend to them in the first place. Because really, Jeremy wasn't that bad. But the little boy hadn't given him a chance. So once he did give him the chance, they actually became friends. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed our story for this week. I will see you all soon.